We are learning about a new push for peace in Russia's war on Ukraine. The Trump administration, it turns out, has been quietly working on a new plan with Moscow. Axios was first to report about the development. A person familiar with the talks telling CNN the president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, has been leading this effort. He, of course, has been at the center of the talks as the Kremlin has indicated a renewed openness to a deal. An army spokesman says Secretary Dan Driscoll and a top-level Pentagon delegation, meantime, arrived in Ukraine this morning to meet with government officials and discuss efforts to end the war. CNN senior military analyst, retired Admiral Adm Stav is joining us now. He's former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and is now a partner at the Carlyle Group, an international investment firm, and of course also serves on the board of advisors for a handful of defense-related companies. Always good to talk to you. When we look at where things stand here, the Ukrainians reportedly are not part of these discussions about this draft plan. But as I just noted, Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, a top-level Pentagon delegation, arriving in Ukraine this morning to meet with officials and for what an Army spokesperson called a fact-finding mission. What is still to learn from your view at this point when it comes to what we need to know to end this war?
I think we need to be in conversation with both sides. I think having Steve Witkoff kind of handle the Moscow portfolio makes some sense. So you send another very high-level delegation. Secretary of the Army, I understand 2 4-star Army generals. That's a lot of firepower from the Pentagon, if you will, to go and talk to Kyiv. Then you see where both sides are, and you try and craft some kind of compromise, Erica. At the end of the day, there probably is going to be some kind of give on the part of the Ukrainians for some portion of territory. But on the other hand, one would hope we can provide the Ukrainians security guarantees from NATO, from the United States. So like all negotiations, you start with the 2 principles and you try and work them toward the center. I think that's what's going on now.
I mean, hopefully everybody who needs to be involved is involved, to your point. I was also struck by some of the reporting from Axios that Russia's envoy was expressing optimism about this deal's chances because, unlike past efforts, he felt that the, quote, Russian position is really being heard. What strikes me is that it seems that the Russian position has been, over the course of these nearly 4 years of war, consistently elevated when there is a discussion about how to end the war and concessions. So is there much that has changed, or is Russia sort of calling the shots?
I wouldn't say Russia's calling the shots. And frankly, Russia is bleeding badly. 300,000 killed so far, probably 600,000 wounded. Perhaps 800,000 have departed the country to avoid the draft. Putin's economy is under quite a bit of stress due to sanctions. NATO's never been stronger with the addition of Sweden and Finland. So in my view, Moscow is not calling the shots. And let's back up, Eric, and remember, Putin's objective was to conquer the entire country. At this point, it looks like the absolute best he'll walk away with. And I'm sorry this is the case, but it looks like Crimea and some kind of a strip of land that connects Crimea to Russia. I hate that. On the other hand, at some point, then the rest of Ukraine, 80% of Ukraine, can sail on free, democratic path to the European Union, and I would say eventually a path to NATO.
And would need those, as you point out, would need those security guarantees as well for the country moving forward. I'm struck by the timing here. Maybe I'm a little cynical, but when we look at the timing, we have these continuous strikes from Russia, right? Striking in Western Ukraine at this point, but also the fact that one would imagine President Trump would probably like a headline that has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think that timing is coming into play at all? Could Russia be exploiting the president's vulnerability in some ways?
I don't think that's the case here. If we give the Trump administration its due, they've been on this case since they came into office. So I don't think this is a spike, nor do I think, for example, the operations off Venezuela, you could make the same argument, are in that category. I think these are probably 2 separate streams of activity. And frankly, if we can get to just a ceasefire in Ukraine and then negotiate the details, as you and I have been discussing, security guarantees for the Ukrainians, dangle in front of the Russians the chances of coming out from under sanctions. I think that's the nature of the deal that's coming together here. And no, I don't see it as particularly tied to what's happening in Washington.
Can I get a quick yes or no from you? Because I do also want to ask you about those F-35 fighter jets in Saudi Arabia. But do you think these additional sanctions on Russia are having an impact at this point?
I do. And bringing them onto two of the biggest Russian oil and gas companies, that's a big deal. Putin will continue with saying American English to go whistling past the graveyard. He needs to get to a deal. I think that's where we're headed.
So when we turn our attention now to Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, of course, visiting in Washington, President Trump announcing the U.S. is ready to sell F-35 fighter jets to the Saudis. There has been concern as well that this would increase the chances of that technology falling into Chinese hands. Do you share those concerns?
I think it's always a concern when we take our absolute most advanced jets. These are the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, nicknamed Lightnings, and they are superb aircraft with an awful lot of stealth technology built into them. They're also a very international aircraft. There are many of our allies are in this program already, and I think that the Saudis, I believe, can be trusted with this technology. But it's going to bear watching, as any kind of transaction does. The other party that's quite concerned about it, Erica, you didn't mention it, but it's the Israelis. Mm-hmm. They have always felt they needed to have what they call qualitative military enhancements, that the ability to have the strongest, most capable military. So they worry when they see the Saudis getting these F-35s. But I think at the end of the day, if you're going to move forward with this idea of the kingdom as a major non-NATO ally, I think this sale makes sense.
Admiral James Stavridis, always great to have your insight, your expertise. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.